Ukrainian and United States officials are set to meet in Saudi Arabia today to talk about ending the war with Russia. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky will be there. At the same time, military officials from more than 30 nations are meeting in Paris with plans to talk about creating an international security force for Ukraine. As far as peace talks go, the question remains where the United States and Ukraine stand after tempers flared at the White House last month.
Joining us this morning, retired Marine Colonel and Security Advisor for the International Security Program in Washington, Mark Cancian. Colonel, always a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me on the show.
We could interview you every morning, 5 days in a row, and every day the story would be different on what's happening in Washington, what's happening around the world. Take us first this morning inside this peace talk conversation between Ukraine, the Middle East. We've got the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed there. We've got Mark Rubio and some others representing the U.S. How do you expect this conversation? What cards have to be played in order for us to get one step closer to peace?
Well, this is a huge moment for Ukraine. President Trump has put a lot of pressure on them, immense pressure, to come to the negotiating table. Of course, he's cut off supplies to Ukraine and limited intelligence sharing. He wants to drive a quick agreement. Ukraine is pushing hard for some security guarantees. It, of course, initially wanted entry into NATO. That's not going to happen. And even then, under the Biden administration, there was a lot of reluctance. But it wants to have some peacekeepers or some sorts of guarantees that the Russians won't attack again in a couple of years and try to finish off Ukraine. They remember the Budapest Agreement of 1994. At that time, Ukraine gave up its nuclear weapons in exchange for guarantees of its sovereignty that was signed by Russia, the United States, and the UK. But of course, that did not help them. So there's a lot on the table.
A lot on the table. And as you mentioned, the United States driving a really tough deal, pulling back intelligence, pulling back aid. For Russia, what needs to be given up on their end? Because we haven't heard a lot about what Russia would need to give up. Of course, Ukraine wants security guarantees, but what would Russia have to give up?
Well, that's a major question because so far, Russia has not been willing to give up anything. In fact, they keep talking about how Ukraine is an illegitimate country. Ultimately, if there's going to be an agreement, they'll need to accept some notion that sovereignty has to be discussed in the future. That is, that although they occupy about 18% of Ukraine, Ukraine is not going to relinquish all of that to Russia. And they'll also have to accept some sort of security guarantees. Could be international peacekeepers, the variety of possibilities, but it's hard to believe that Ukraine would accept an agreement that did not have something to secure it in the future.
Colonel, there have been a lot of fingers pointed at the process in which President Trump is working on this deal. We don't know what everything looks like under the table or behind the door, but a lot of accusations have been saying he's being too nice to Russia. He's being friends with Putin instead of being friendlier to Zelensky. We don't know exactly all what's happening, but we do know that there's been a tone shift, pretty recognizable shift in this relationship with Russia. With your expert advice, how do you see this relationship working out? What needs to happen?
Well, unfortunately, there has been a substantial shift in tone. Trump is been much more inclined to see Russia's perspective, to say friendly things about Russia and to put less pressure on it, as opposed to Ukraine. The problem with Ukraine and Zelensky is that whereas Biden had seen Ukraine as an ally who was fighting for not just itself, but in the interests of the United States and Europe, Trump regards Ukraine as a client that is not sufficiently deferential to its patron. And that's why Trump keeps saying, you don't have the cards. This is not a relationship of friendship. It's a relationship of power. And Trump admires power. That's one reason he admires Putin and not Zelensky.
One of the interesting points of this deal is this minerals deal that President Trump wants Ukraine to sign. Say we get there, say we get this minerals deal, that would put U.S. interests in Ukraine. What would that do in terms of possible Russia aggression? Because you'd have United States interest over there. Would that change the way that Trump sees Putin? Because then any other subsequent threats would be like, okay, well, now you're impacting our interest, which is that mineral deal.
A mineral deal would certainly help Ukraine's security because, as you say, it would be American economic interests and also American citizens in Ukraine. But it's a pretty weak guarantee. There have been many, many times in history where countries have had material interests that were then lost through invasion, and they did not take a military response. So it's helpful for Ukraine, but it's not sufficient for their long-term security.
Colonel, is this 75-year-old alliance with Europe starting to unravel outside of Russia and Ukraine, everyone around them? Is this relationship unraveling?
No question that it's fraying, that President Trump does not regard the relationship with Europe and NATO as a fundamental value for the United States. He regards them as freeloaders. He doesn't see them as helping the United States with its security. Now, we've seen twice in the 20th century when the United States tried to pull back from Europe, how we got dragged into European conflicts. That's why we have NATO. But President Trump and many Americans, regard them as freeloaders who aren't paying enough and whose security is not central to U.S. security.
Well, Colonel Mark Hansen, we appreciate your insight. As Jason said at the top of this interview, we could have you on every day to talk about something different going on. And I'm sure not the last time we're going to talk to you in the coming weeks as we watch this potential deal unfold. Colonel, thank you for your time this morning.